Open your text up to John chapter 6, please. And verse 45. First, let me tell all of you what a pleasure it's been for me. What a delight to meet each of you and how much now you are a part of my life. So please keep in touch. Friend me on Facebook. I had him do that this morning. I appreciate it so much. Spirit Hill Bible or Don Stevens, either one. We'll get to my Facebook pages. And friend me there, and let's keep in contact. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Spirit Hill Bible Institute, and that'll also keep you in touch with what we're doing. And when I say we, that's me and Sam. Me and Sam and my nephew Dwayne. My nephew Dwayne and Sam are the two who are most inspirational in bringing me to the conclusion of being a full preterist, and that was a year ago. So it's so wonderful when those young men, as an older man that you are mentoring, begin to mentor you. Isn't that wonderful? What a delight that it is your son. What a delight. So I'm going to spend about 10 minutes here with a couple of texts that have been very important to me recently, and then I'm going to turn it over to Sam. And Sam's going to come up here, and he's going to share with you some tips on how to reach his generation. How about that? Does that sound good to you guys? Is that all right? All right, so let's look at this one text here. This is Jesus speaking. I know because it's in red, right? In the modern literal version, they actually bold it. And they bold not only where Jesus is speaking, they give you a bold where God or the Holy Spirit is speaking. So I thought that's kind of cool. So here in John chapter 6, Jesus says, "It's been written that they'll all be taught of God." Now that fits with that text in Hebrews 8 that I was giving you. So in the new covenant, they're all going to be personally taught of God. And that goes along with that statement that he said that you won't have to teach one another. I'm going to put my presence. I'm going to put my image on the lining of their hearts, is the way the Message frames it. And I love that. I'm going to carve an image of myself on the lining of their hearts. So God in you through the indwelling spirit that God gives you as he began to pour out his spirit upon all flesh, that was in order to identify those who were his. For the first time in the first century, you have two people of God in the same generation. One who are people of God through the covenant that he made with Israel. And then in Acts 10, as the call goes out to the Gentiles, and David's done such a fantastic job, and I really enjoyed understanding the Gentiles a little better. Because this plea of God and this plan for God is to the whole world. And so Jesus is going to use terms like anyone, everyone. All men have fallen short of the glory of God. Did y'all get that? All men have fallen short of the glory of God. So God has a call upon everyone, and Jesus is going to make this statement here. But in this new covenant, all are going to be taught of God. I'm beginning to wonder if maybe even those outside that new covenant who haven't quite gotten there yet. Y'all understand what I'm saying? Because watch what he says. Not that anyone has seen the Father. Well, he says, therefore, in verse 45, therefore, everyone who hears from the Father has learned. And that's after what he says up in the former text, no one's going to come to me. Oh, catch the importance of this. Jesus, this is the one who is lifted up. And if I be lifted up from the earth, will what? Underline, all men unto me. And then he makes these clarifying statements. No one is able to even come to me. That's this draw. And David did a fantastic job about talking about that draw. Now, in this translation, it says, if the Father who sent me does not attract him. But I agree with Dave. I think it's more than attraction, right? He's not just attractive. Your Father is very attractive. And he shows that in the beauty of his nature, right? It's gorgeous. He's gorgeous. And so he's very attractive in the sense that he pursues you. when I used to come home from a day of plumbing, and my children were little, my little girls and Sam and all, they would come running out to the truck, to greet me when I'd get home. Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. My oldest one, especially, I remember, Danielle, she'd come running out. She'd throw her hands up. Daddy, 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 hold you. Because, they throw their hands up and we always say, what? You want me to hold you? So she'd hold you, Daddy, hold you. And I would run around. And she would chase me, hold you, Daddy, hold you. And then almost in tears, Daddy, hold you. Your Father loves to be pursued. And the pleasure the Father has most is for you to catch him. Pursue him with all your heart, because he loves to be caught. And when you catch the presence of the Father, it is amazing. He desired to be in every one of you, and he sent his Son to die to make it possible, because he cannot fellowship sin. There is no darkness in him at all. And so there could be no darkness in you at all. Do you understand that? Humans, that in them, their heart is always intent on doing evil continually. And so the Father gave his indwelling Spirit to give you the power over sin if you will listen to him. Again, the message he has given me over the last many years: tell my children to hear me for themselves. He wants to speak to you. He wants to guide you. He gave you the power through the indwelling Spirit. He not only took care of the penalty of sin, he took care of the power of sin in your life. But you have to listen to him. You have to walk in the Spirit. You have to pray in the Spirit. You have to go to sleep in the Spirit. You have to awake and arise. Remember, under the old law, you teach your children when they get up. You teach them the law throughout the day. You teach them when they go down at night. With the indwelling Spirit, your Father yearns to teach you when you get up, when you go through your day, when you walk, on your walks, when you do your jog every morning, when you work out at the exercise center. He wants to teach you, and he will show you things in nature. I used to ask the Father, I said, Father, teach me how to take my kids on a nature walk and show you naturally, so that they'll look at me, as one of my children did one day and said, Dad, I don't want to hear another sermon. Listen, we've got to get these black print off a white page in the Bible into people's hearts. And the only way to do that is to have that word living and abiding in you, so that it is natural and not a sermon. People are sick of sermons. They're leaving churches by the droves. And what they're sick about church and what they're sick about sermons is that they're listening to the flesh of men and not the Spirit of God. Did y'all grasp that? Sermons are constructed today from flesh and intellect. That's a natural man. And a natural man cannot understand the things of the Spirit. So what's being said from pulpits is just natural words. They're just entertainment in many ways. They're just sermons composed you could hear at any self-improvement seminar. People are hungry for the Spirit of God, for the Word of God, active and living. That sword that divides soul and spirit needs to come out of your mouth, and it's not going to come out of your natural sense and your natural man. It's going to come out of a redeemed man with a redeemed heart and a redeemed mind. Do y'all follow me? That's the Father and what he wants to help do and perform in you. The miracles did cease, but not the work of the Spirit. You need to understand that. The work of revealing truth to you is every day. The truth about who you are in him. Not who you are at your work, not who you are even in your marriage to another mortal, flawed individual. But who you are in him, who you're going to be for an eternity, and the plans that he has laid out for you from the day he created you. He created you to have purpose and meaning within him and a role in his great work beyond this life. Now, there's a work in this life, but there's a work beyond this life. And he wants to prepare you. This is the preparation field. This is the training camp. This is to get you ready for greater things. And he says, if I can't trust you in the small things, how can I trust you with the universe or with the planet? That's all I have to say. Thank you very much. All right. Sam is an Iraqi war veteran. He spent 3 tours at the height of the Iraqi war. And one night, and headed to a very remote site with the Army, he got a call. And can you sing? We heard you could sing. Oh, yeah, I can sing. And so they brought him into the Army band. The Army band made more dangerous runs. You'll have to explain maybe a little better, but they got a citation in Iraq as the 1st Infantry, making more successful convoy runs. Now, what did the Army consider a successful convoy run? You didn't lose anybody. Because there wasn't a war front, they lost people in just going from front to front on convoys, with roadside bombs. But they made the most successful convoy runs, and he said the reason was, Dad, is because every time before we left home, our commander prayed for us not to lose anybody. And if I understand it, they didn't lose a single soldier. And they had the most convoy runs of any unit. But they created an MOS in the Army for a vocalist for Sam. Isn't that amazing? And he got to spend the war singing and entertaining the troops at these various posts. So Sam Stevens, my son, my one and only son. He always forgets the begotten part. He always forgets that. I don't have a whole lot to say. If you've seen me, you have seen the Father. 15 minutes. Thanks, TJ. I tried to do a career in comedy, but I found out I wasn't too funny, so I decided to do something else. I spent 3 deployments and 2 marriages. To a lot of hard work. I spent 9 years in the Army, and I was actually in the palace up on the 4th floor when they caught Saddam. The 4th Infantry Division was the unit that caught Saddam, and I was with 4th Infantry Division at that time in his hometown, at Tikrit, and in the biggest palace. That thing was about 2 football fields long and about 5 stories. It's interesting because it sat on about 100-foot embankment on the Tigris River. Of course, where's the Tigris, right? It's one of the 4, so one of the big 4. So that was interesting, and I could spend a lot of time telling stories, but TJ said I only had 15 minutes to do it, so I'll pick them wisely. And unlike Brian, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I'm not afraid of crowds, and I don't know that that's a good thing. So I could spend a lot of time, but I don't want to speak at y'all. I've had some great conversations with y'all. It's funny because Mom and Dad raised me to say yes sir, no sir, and after 9 years in the Army, you realize that you can't say yes sir and no sir to everyone because some people get mad if you do, because they're not sirs, they're sergeants, they work for a living and so forth. So I actually got unprogrammed out of that for 9 years, and then I come into a conference like this where I may be the youngest guy in the room, I'm not sure, by just a few years with my mother. And thank you both. But forgive me if I'm disrespectful, but in calling you by your first name. But I have that as kind of a sign of endearment, with Glenn, who's quickly becoming my best friend, and I got to talk, with him a little bit, and have been so inspired by the book, his little book that he wrote, and I had to give it away one time at Dad's request to someone who needed it. And I will say I had some very unchristian thoughts about that, and had a hard time parting with it. But I got another one and got Glenn's signature in it. So it's even better now. I'm not giving that one away. I don't care what the Bible says. In no short order, of course, Brian had a lot
to do with a lot of the foundation that I have. As I was learning this about a year and a half ago and coming into this, Dad taught me really well about the scriptures and, the candy questions that came in really handy, about what verses where and what books of the Bible. And after Charlie's talk is really simple because I knew right where that was, just sing the song and you can go right to the book that you need to get to. And I appreciate how he lays that out. It's just been really beneficial for me, but I want to tell you why. The reason is because y'all have created the foundation. See, it's very important for a generation like mine that has access to any resource they want to at any time that they want to have those resources available. That's y'all. I can't write a book yet. I could, it just wouldn't be that great. But y'all are writing the books. Y'all are making the blogs. Y'all are creating the audio. Y'all are making the videos. Y'all are the ones paving the way. And most of you in the room, as I found out yesterday with the poll, that most of y'all came from a little bit of a Church of Christ background, because y'all have such an authority in the Word, it was quite easy to make that leap, just the same as it was for me. That's why Brian's book had such an impact on me, is because Paul was the same way. Pharisee of Pharisees, he made the leap over, spent 2 years having to get unprogrammed with personal teaching. I'm still spending some time on that. I think it'll take a little over 2 years to get unprogrammed with most of it. But y'all are the ones helping us make that leap. In the last 3 weeks alone, I've talked with people that were actually a little bit younger than me. 2 of them were 31, one of them was 28. One of them, multi-million-dollar a year CEO of his own company, who I'm now personally coaching because he said, well, I'd like to get some places and you're the next step. I live on a pasture. What are you talking about? He sees something as we have conversations over a beer, which I still just really hate the taste of. But they don't want a preacher, they want a friend. And so you'll have a lot of impact having those one-on-one conversations with people. And the books, the blogs, the audio that y'all are writing make those conversations possible. Please understand this. Even the little book. when the front of that book quotes C.S. Lewis, who's one of my favorite authors, but C.S. Lewis was an atheist for a long time, like most of the people you may be talking with. However, what I'm coming to find out is that most of the people are not unbelievers. They know. And most of the millennial generation don't want to go to church because they see right through it. They already know there's something more. So in the last 3 weeks, I had 3 conversations with people that I've been building relationships with for some time. And scripture has come up only a little bit of spiritual walk and so forth. And I'm having these conversations with them very, very fluidly. And finally, it organically comes up and I decide, okay, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag here. So I'll go, in some slick way as much as I can. I go, okay, well, I'm one of those weird people, and I'm sure we believe all different things and everything, but I'm one of those weird people. I got these crazy beliefs like Jesus already came back. All 3 of them would go, well, that would make a lot more sense than everything I'm being taught right now. All 3 of them. That's it. That's all I had to do. And I'm telling you, now all 3 of them want to know more. Not that they don't even know Bible. These people are already in church, see. But I'm going, well, it's interesting because it's not necessarily what's going to be taught by your preacher. And so we start talking and they're just dragging it up. Yeah, said something. But it's because of these books that y'all are writing. It's because of the references, because y'all done the homework, y'all made the leap, and now those resources, they still want to be served on a silver platter. So we still got to bucket that in such a way. And I want to tell you that it's working, because at 35 years old, I've read most of your books. TJ, yours is next. George's I read yesterday, cover to cover. I didn't know any of it until Adam's little talk. And then with his book, I was able to follow some of what Adam had to say. It's working. And they want to know, because the millennial generation, the CEOs don't know what to do with them. Maybe some of y'all are that way. You don't know what to do with this millennial generation because they all look like rebels. And I'm telling you, that's not true. They're simply asking questions. You know the number one ingredient for someone to learn something? You gotta ask a question. If all you're doing is making statements, it's not going to work. So after I stopped making statements, I also got converted. That took some time and a lot of spirit work. What I did want to tell you, how much time I got left, TJ? 8. Okay, good. Then that means I get to take time to thank the right people. Have they not done a great job with this conference? Man. I mean, they've just done so good. By the way, and I want to ask this, what is the easiest way to get money to you for those that do want to donate to the cause?
You go through PayPal, the conference website,
Okay.
you can leave it over here, you can write a check, pay your inheritance.
Like briefcases and things like that? Fantastic. Marvelous. Cold hard.
You don't want.
Perfect. All right, good. But Charlie, I have your website bookmarked for my own resources, and I just thank you for that work that you've done. Adam, we will continue our conversations that we started this morning. Adam's writing down a lot of people that are a bit of the millennial generation that are coming up, and it's going to be our job now to continue this message forward, what I would call the actual gospel. Brian, I mean, I can't thank you enough. I mean, I've got you on this white stallion, running through. I'm telling you, man, that book just really affected me. It hit me. So now I have a copy for myself, and I can give Dwayne back his that I've had for a year. And Glenn, I've already explained to you how thankful I am, for your stuff. David, thank you so much for everything. I've learned so much from David's talks. And now I can instead of watching all of Dad's videos that he's got up every single morning, now I can split it between Dad and Berean Bible. So, this is helpful to me, right? You have to have these resources. And of course, TJ Maria, not just for the intellectual property that you guys have, but for the hearts. I can't say enough. George, like I said, it's one of the easiest reads I've ever had in my life. I don't like reading novels, and I read his cover to cover in a day. Okay. But it's a good book. And it's a good introductory to anybody that actually just wants to get into the history. And I'm definitely an introductor. I haven't had a whole lot of schooling in that. I haven't looked into it. What I want to do is tell you one of the stories that I had while deployed. And it was with a Jewish friend. We roomed with 5 people to a room during that deployment. And one of the guys in there was a Jew. And of course, in the Army, you kind of laugh at all the problems that people have with diversity, because in the Army, you don't care. If this guy's on my left, he's covering my back, and I don't really care what his beliefs are in that particular moment. You understand? They don't matter, right? You're fighting for each other. So it's easy to get along, and the Army teaches you a lot about that diversity and that clique and camaraderie and so forth. And so, it was no surprise that the beliefs in the room were a little bit different. Me, a Christian, him, a Jew. And one night on guard duty, because you have nothing else to do during deployment, we sat and talked. And I said, man, tell me a little bit. I'm curious, and this was like 6 months. I'm curious about just being a Jew today. What is that? What does that look like? You read a lot about that in the Old Testament. And I said, because it's funny, because how does that work? So he walked through this. This is, of course, several years ago. I didn't have the ammunition I have today, but nonetheless, what do you do about the temple? You don't have one. So how do you do that? I didn't have that back then. So it was good. I was open to listen. And he said, well, yeah. And so we talked about 2 hours. And I listened to every word. I threw a question in here. I threw a question in there. Definitely not leading. I truly wanted to understand from his standpoint. And of course, at the end of all that, he said, well, now you tell me about yours. Okay. And then I got to talk, and I talked for about 2 hours. And we sat and just had this great conversation under the moon and the stars with each other about our religious beliefs. And at the end of my talk, he looked at me and I said, now, you don't necessarily take the New Testament part into great consideration. He's like, no. I said, what do you do with this Jesus guy? Because he certainly can be proven in history. He said, yeah. He said, well, of course, believe he was a great teacher and that, but we mostly just hold to what the Old Testament, of course, first 5 books and so on. And I said, okay. And I said, well, and I got into what that gospel message is a little bit more than I had in those 2 hours. And that was another about 15 minutes or so. And at the end of all that, he looked at me and he goes, well, I really appreciate you saying what you said, but it just can't be that easy. And that was his response to the gospel. It can't be that easy. Have you had a conversation with a futurist that ended the same way? I have. Oh, yeah. It can't be, what's left? Well, that didn't make any sense. What would we be doing now? We wouldn't have evangelical message to go out to the world if it's already been done in 5 verses that I can take you to in your Bible. So what now? And yet we sit in this room And we each have our own personal walk with God himself. And the reason I missed half of yesterday was because my walk with God just really wasn't what I wanted it to be. After chasing him for 20 years, I'm still not where I want to be with God. David said, I have such delicious thoughts about the Lord that I'm ashamed to mention them. I want that. Paul said he wanted more. I'm like, yeah, well, you're greedy, so just back off. What I want to encourage you to do, as us millennials wrap our head around the actual gospel, because people like Adam, like myself, like Dad, like Brian, and like every single person in this room, just in conversation alone has the power to do, continue to come out with your stuff because we need it. And what I'm telling you is there is hope for this millennial generation because their ears are open. They are asking questions. They are listening and they are responding. Matter of fact, I'm excited about this upcoming generation because of the resources we have available to us. It makes those conversations like I had with a Jewish friend a lot easier because now I can go, well, let's look at that from an Old Testament standpoint because I've had a lot of this now helpful education from each of you. And so I really want to encourage you, continue to do what you're doing. I will read your books if no one else does. You understand? Don Preston's new one is already in my mailbox. So it's little things like that. I just want to encourage you, and I just want to thank y'all for being here and being educational towards me to continue to grow in the Lord and His walk. Thank you.
Yeah.